everyone, welcome back. Today I'm here with one of my reading updates. I would love to say weekly, but it has actually been like 2 weeks and some change because there was the long holiday Thanksgiving weekend, and then this past Friday, I caught a cold, as you can possibly still hear a little bit of. So I am filming this on Sunday, and we'll see when it goes up. During that final week of November, I finished 2 books, the first of which was The Problem Client by Maxwell. I've been talking about this book a lot in the last few weeks because it was written by one of my best friends, and I'm really excited about it. Even more so, I'm excited to say I loved this book. It's always a little nerve-wracking when you read something that was written by someone you know, but I had such a good time reading this book. As I've mentioned in previous videos, this book is the first in a series that follows the men of Cafe Soy, a Portland cafe that serves coffee by day, but by night serves a little something more, which is that it turns into like a brothel, but a magical brothel. One thing that was really great and that I appreciated about this book is that the brothel itself, the environment, it's not a sad or upsetting kind of environment. It is a loving, healthy, happy household where all of these men are just like, they have these relationships together, like friendships, and they support each other, they hang out and play video games together. It's just very cute, and yeah, I really like that she brought in that sort of atmosphere to the book itself. This book follows the story of Damien, who is one of the men who work and live at the cafe. Damien has been working at the cafe to pay off some debt. Now he's at a point where he has paid it all off, so he's been getting rid of his clients, but he has one client that he just can't bring himself to cancel with. He looks forward to these meetings every week, and he's got some feels in there, and that's kind of the start of the book. So you can kind of imagine that we're following this whole story of his relationship with that client, the problem client. So it's really, really adorable. One thing that I also enjoyed about the cafe itself, like I said, there's a magical element, and that is that there are these magical doors that open up for the clients to go into the hosting rooms where they'll meet the cafe employees, and it's established in the books that those doors are able to kind of assess the mindset and intentions of the clients who are entering. So if someone was going in with the intention to do harm, the doors would not open for them. So that kind of just also creates this nice environment as well. It takes away all the stuff that could be gross and just leaves us with these fun scenes. They're definitely NSFW, they're explicit, so keep that in mind if that's not your thing. Maybe this is not your book, but if you're looking for that sort of smutty popcorn read, it's a great one. The one last thing that I'll say about this book is that there's also a shifter community built into the world, which is kind of where more of the paranormal side comes in. And I felt like KP did a really good job of building that in, where I'd kind of forgotten that that was a part of the book until I reached the point where it was the first person was revealed to be a shifter. And I found that it was actually really easy to believe the whole setup of that, the whole community that was built into the world. It just felt really smooth the way that she wrote it in, so I was impressed by that as well. So yeah, obviously I'm a little bit biased because KP is one of my best friends and I'm just super duper proud of her, but I was so impressed by this book. I gave it 5 stars. I highly recommend it. And she also did a really good job of building up the other characters, enough that there's interest, but not so much that I feel like I fully know them. There were 2 characters that I found myself really intrigued by and wanting to know more of their story, and it's one of those characters that will be followed in book 2. So I am very, very excited for that. And I think book 2 is supposed to come out early next year, so keep an eye out. Well, definitely read the first book, but then keep an eye out. The second book I read in that week was 100 Demon Dialogues. This is not one that was on my TBR, but Jess read this one, thought I would enjoy it, suggested it, and she was right. I did very much enjoy it. This is actually a more of a graphic novel. Basically, if you've ever seen those challenges, I think it's like 100-day project. Now I can't remember what they're called. It's basically where you try to do something creative every day for 100 days. So this artist was doing that challenge, and the titular demon is sort of the manifestation of the negative self-talk, anxiety voice in her head that was telling her that, you know, she wasn't going to be good enough. All of her work was not as good as people think it is, and they're going to discover that she's not as good as she says she is, and all this, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so through these 100 pictures, she is finding ways to work with that demon and to kind of bring a sense of peace to their relationship. And it's honestly really, really cute. It's really touching. So I highly recommend this one. It's a very quick read, and it's cute. Yeah, so it'll get your feels. So I give this one 5 stars as well. So with those 2 additional books, I ended up reading 7 books total in the month of November, and I had a page count of 1,646 pages. Then in this last week, I finished 3 books. One of them was How Bad Are Bananas, which I have been working on for a few weeks. This book wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but I actually really enjoyed it. The author is basically doing as much as possible to quantify the carbon footprint of everything. In fact, I think that's the subtitle, like the carbon footprint of everything. Everything in the book is quantified by weight, so from grams to pounds to tons. And the main audience for the book are readers who live in either the UK, the US, Canada, or Australia, because we are kind of the primary carbon creators, or at least on an individual level, we have a larger carbon footprint per person. So the goal that the book suggests is to live a 10-ton lifestyle, where you try to have all of your activities add up to no more than 10 tons. And then the book is broken down into categories of like 0 to 100 grams, and then all the way up to tons and tons of carbon footprint. And so you can really just kind of scroll through. At a certain point, I ended up, you know, kind of skimming different parts because there's certain parts that didn't apply to me at all. But, you know, getting a banana, as the title implies, it's not that bad apparently. But it made me think a lot more about the different things that can go into creating a carbon footprint from certain things that you wouldn't have thought of before. And it definitely made me want to try to do more sort of calculating to see how close I am to that 10-ton lifestyle and how super far off I might be, and what I can do to change that and get my carbon footprint down a bit. The author is very upfront about the fact that it is impossible to actually fully calculate the carbon footprint of anything, because there is just so much that goes into it, and you can just get more and more granular and spiral on forever. So his calculations are very rough, and he's very honest about that. But the point of the book is to give you a general idea and to give you sort of a guide to think a little bit more about what you're doing, and to decide what places in your life could you cut some things out, and what places in your life does it make sense to have a bigger carbon footprint. So it's not preachy at all. It's definitely just like, here's some information should you want it. So it doesn't, you know, guilt you or anything like that. And I definitely recommend it. I give it 4 stars. I think it's a handy guide. Then I also did a reread on Jo Walton's The Just City, which is the first book in her Thessaly trilogy. I just really love Jo Walton. I love her books. I love her writing style. I feel like she's able to create these worlds that the combination of things just shouldn't work. It shouldn't make sense, but it does, and I love it. So this book combines sci-fi. There's robots, there's time travel, but then there's also Greek deities, and there's magic going on, and then Socrates is there, and we're all working on philosophy and building Plato's Just City, and there's just all of these pieces, and they somehow work perfectly. I adore the characters. Going back to this world was such a pleasant read. I would definitely be interested in continuing to read through the series, so I might try to pick up the second or third books in the next month or two, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, this is still a 5-star book for me. And the final book I finished this week was Intuitive Tarot. This is one, again, that I've been working on for a while, and I think it took me a bit to work through because I started realizing it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be when I was going in, which is really on me. I should have like taken the title and the synopsis in a little bit better, but I was hoping to get a better understanding of the core meaning of all the cards, just almost committing it to memory so that it's a little bit easier when I'm doing a reading, so that I don't have to look up those core meanings as often. But the premise of this book is in some ways to give you an understanding of those cards. So there were some very helpful pieces in this book for that, but the bulk of this book is about using your intuition and to see the symbolism in your cards and to see what sort of feeling one card might invoke from you. So it's more about your like just intuitive reading of a card instead of the base meanings of a card. I actually ended up giving this book 5 stars because I think that for its actual purpose, it is a fabulous resource. Even though it wasn't what I was looking for, I can't fault the book for that. So if you're looking for a way to better connect on an intuitive level with your tarot cards, I highly recommend this one. Even if you're just a total beginner to tarot reading, this is a good way to connect with your cards. As there was a lot of stuff in the beginning that was about like basic how to get started, how to like get a feel for your deck, which I think would have been really helpful when I was first beginning to learn tarot. So there are several reasons why I would recommend this book, even though it wasn't what I was necessarily looking for in this moment. So there you go. And moving on to what I am currently reading / planning to read going into next week. The main book I'm reading is Shards of Honor by Lois McMaster-Bujold. This is the first book in her Vorkosigan saga. I say first, but this is one of those series where there are many different lists of the order in which you could or should read this series. So I picked one that was on Goodreads and I'm just going with that. So in this case, Shards of Honor is the first book. So I'm reading this one. This is actually one of Jess's favorite series, and I love Lois McMaster-Bujold, but I've really only read her fantasy books. I haven't read her sci-fi. So for many reasons, I've been meaning to pick up the series, and I kind of set it as a goal to myself that before we got married, I would read at least some of the books in Jess's favorite series. So here we are, I'm starting it out, and I'm actually really, really hooked. I'm glad I picked this one up because as soon as I started into it, I have no idea why it waited so long. It's going really well. Once I finish Shards of Honor, I am hoping to pick up the second book in the series, again, according to this list, which I believe was Warrior's Apprentice. I know it's the first book that follows Miles, who is actually a disabled character, so I'm really excited to read a book that has a disabled main character, because you just don't see that very often. But yeah, so I'm really excited to pick that one up as well. The other book that I'm actively working on at the moment is Divination for Beginners by Scott Cunningham. This is another one that has just been on my list for a while and that I started reading and then kind of got out of the mood for, so I'm hoping to get back into it. Scott Cunningham is actually one of my favorite Wiccan authors, so I'm excited to read it. I'm a little bit unsure of how much I'm going to get out of this one, but I mostly picked it up just because it's Scott Cunningham. So we'll see. I'm curious, and it's honestly not a very big book, so it shouldn't take me too long to get through it once I actually bunker down and start reading. Then the only other book on my list is one I really want to start immediately, but I might actually postpone it until the week after next, so the week of the 16th, because that is the Queer in Space readathon. If you have not heard of this readathon, I will put a link down below to Owl's blog post about it. This is the second annual Queer in Space readathon, and there are some cool challenges set up for the month. There's a group read if you aren't sure, if you don't have any books in mind. There's a suggestion there. I don't think I'll be picking up the group read, but because I already had this on my list, I have Down Among the Dead by KB Wagers. And this is the second book in her Fairy and War trilogy, and the Fairy and War trilogy takes place just after the Andronin War trilogy, and I am just obsessed with this world. I love KB Wagers' writing style. The characters are just so good. The main character is Hale Bristol, and she is just as fierce as can be, and the way the last book ended, it was kind of rough on its own, but then there was a little preview of this book, and reading that preview just gutted me. So I'm very excited that this book is out, and I cannot wait to pick it up, except I might make myself wait just a few more days so that I can read it for the readathon. Alright, so that's what I've been reading and what I'm planning to read going into next week. Let me know down in the comments what you all have been up to. What have you been reading? How's your end of year Goodreads statistics going and all that stuff? Thank you all so much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I hope you all are having a wonderful week so far, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!